It is 9 minutes past 9. And every one of us, unfortunately, have arrived late to this. It should have been really straightforward. The statement should have gone something like, I am appalled to hear that the getaway driver of an Oldham cop killer plans to launch vigilante street patrols. As the MP for this town, I will do everything in my power to stop this and make sure that it is the police that patrol our streets and not vigilante mobsters. I oppose this. I oppose this. And it will not happen. But we didn't get that.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
Now, it's been all the news this week. It's been pretty much one-sided news to do with these vigilante street patrols. And so many words. When a handful of words was all that was needed. None of us are stupid. We all know what's going on. We all know what the relationships are. And I'm going to dissect the two statements from McMahon, a whole host of newspaper articles, and we'll work our way through it. Yes, let's start with this. Unbeknown to most people, very quietly, I mean, The Independent isn't even a newspaper anymore, is it? It's just more of an online sort of thing. This came out, which was a Greater Manchester police officer has been accused of sexual assault and misconduct. The story is actually horrific. He's a constable. He's been released on bail after being accused of sexual assault and misconduct. Now, it's interesting how it makes reference to sexual assault and misconduct, but when you read the actual content, Mohammed Adnan Ali, facing 21 charges, including 15 counts of misconduct in public office, 5 charges of sexual assault, and 1 count of distributing an indecent photo of a child. So this isn't just a copper who's involved in sexual assault and misconduct or been charged or accused. He's accused, he's in the court, isn't he? You know, there's children involved. And it gets worse as you carry on reading it. Against both female and male victims. Doesn't seem there was a preference there. Prosecutors claim Mr. Ali sent pictures of himself to teenagers. That's right. He sent pictures of himself to teenagers. And made sexualized remarks to people under the age of 18. Go back to the heading. Greater Manchester Police accused of sexual assault and misconduct. Where are the last 2 words, Greater Manchester Police? Against minors? Is that not right? Against children? Is that not what this article is now actually saying? It's against children. He was first arrested in October 2018 on suspicion of police corruption, following a report he had abused his position for a sexual purpose. He was then arrested a second time a month after, again on suspicion of police corruption, and a third time in March 2019. District Judge James Hatton granted Mr. Ali bail under the condition he was not to have contact with anyone under the age of 18. That means he was not to have contact with any children. Do you see? The omission of the word children. This is independent. Don't suppose Andy Burnham has anything to say. If you remember, put aside hammering down my door with 6 of them. This is a police force in special measures. Lost 90,000 crimes that they've admitted to. I suspect the number is much more than that. Been deemed institutionally racist. And now, they're in such dire straits. They've got a cop killer's mobster getaway driver and his mates, convicted heroin dealers, cocaine dealers, who are willing to go out and help them clean up the streets. You couldn't make it up. You couldn't make it up. So, McMahon, this was his first statement. I suspect this was written for him. I suspect this was written for him. That's my friend who can't get on, so I'm going to have to give her a link in a second. But the Manchester Evening News, has reported that efforts are being made to establish a community patrol in parts of the constituency. Nationally, a number of similar groups have already been established. Really? Similar groups? I didn't know there were similar groups nationally, led by mobsters, that have been established. But if the MP for Oldham West and Royton claims that, who am I to call him out as a liar? So he's saying nationally a number of similar groups have been already established. And it proves a source of tension for local councils and police forces in reconciling how to ensure the safety of volunteers and the wider public and ensuring basic standards are met. Oh, a source of tension then. I do not doubt that residents looking to organise community patrols are likely to be well-meaning. There you go. I do not doubt that residents, he can't call them mobsters, he's calling them residents. But he claims that they are well-meaning, as will many in the wider community who want to offer support. But without clear regulation and basic standards, such as training, governance and compliance being put in place, it remains my view that they should not be encouraged or facilitated by the police or local council. He thinks he's clever. He's not saying what his view is. He's saying what the police's view is. Should be, sorry. So he's claiming what the police and council should be doing. How hard would it have been to say, no chance am I supportive of this? But he's not. What he exactly says, it remains my view that they should not be encouraged or facilitated by the police or local council. That's not saying stop them. My concern reflects those set out in July by Cllr Shah, leader of the council. People's concerns about the levels of crime in the area are very real and something all members hear about from their local residents very regularly. We would, however, question whether street patrols of this nature, blah, blah, blah. We would never seek to condemn, was the opening words she used. Why has Jim McMahon omitted we would never seek to condemn when the question asked then, as in now, wasn't about residents, it was about the mobsters. taking to the streets. The convicted gangsters, heroin dealers, cocaine dealers, violent criminals. That is what people were objecting to. But you can see here, he doesn't say anything there. There has always been a role for community involvement to reduce crime. In most cases, this will not be patrols but formalised neighbourhood watch schemes, which are supported by the police, local council and often housing associations. We know all of this. We are all supportive of these schemes. We're on about this specific scheme, Jim. The one that you're avoiding talking about. As a constituency MP, I am regularly in dialogue with Greater Manchester Police and Oldham Council on community safety and crime issues. My postbag regularly receives concerns from residents about rising crime and the lack of resources to allow the police to respond. So what? Are you saying because the police can't respond, mobsters should? I have written previously on the damage done by a decade of Conservative cuts. Oh, I have written previously of the damage done by a decade of Conservative cuts. The town is on its knees because of the damage you and your mates have done. But let's blame the Conservatives. Let's blame national government and keep blaming national government because, our town has lost local police stations, both its county court and magistrates' courts have closed, and not a single custody cell is operational in the borough. All of this undermines public confidence. No, what people are specifically making reference to is the mobster, getaway driver of an Oldham cop killer, Irish IMY, who was out on one of your campaigning strolls, which we'll get to later, setting up vigilante street patrols. It is very specific. What is with all of this whataboutery? Trying to make it into a conversation about something else. We are very specific in what we object to. Though more officers are being recruited, they will not replace all we have lost, nor will we see the support staffing replaced to the same level. Let's have the mobsters on patrol then. Is that what you're saying? Even in this challenging context, we must see a return to local and active neighbourhood policing as set out by the Mayor and the new Chief Constable, and for that to be supported by reporting lines which are fit for purpose. Residents have the right to expect active investigations into crimes which are reported. This also means that the IOPS IT system must be sorted out once and for all. Until it is, victims will not get the justice they deserve and frontline officers will have a much harder job to do. All this is essential to maintain and rebuild public trust and confidence. What has any of that got to do with a mobster planning on setting out on vigilante street patrols? I think they'll be worse than Oldham riots, Sheila. Look, already the town is a laughingstock across the country. This made the national newspapers, remember. Debbie Cashmere is nowhere to be seen. She's an Oldham MP, isn't she? Angela Rayner, part of her constituency is Oldham. But actually, I don't blame her as much because, But Debbie Abrahams is an Oldham MP. Jim McMAHON is an Oldham MP. Neither of them have come out and condemned it, have they? Neither of them. Thank you, Mark. This is exactly what it is, isn't it? It's utter bollocks. It's utter bollocks. That's your MP, folks. That is your MP.
since the 2019 lockdown in India-occupied Kashmir. And there are many of my constituents who have family members today living in that region who have been affected by that. What now 4 decades of hostility and restrictions on human everyday life has meant is that they've not been able to live a decent, fulfilled life in the way that all of us would want for our families. And so I just want to offer my solidarity to all those who are concerned about India-occupied Kashmir, concerned about constant restrictions on everyday lives that are taking place, and really concerned about what the future might mean. I know if it was my family, I would share the same concern, the same fears for the future, but also that desperate desire to want hope for the future too. I'll be calling for the UK government to do far more to make sure that Kashmiri people have a voice, and that for my constituents here in Oldham who have family members there, that through your MP you have a voice straight to Parliament.
How many Kashmiris do you think live in Oldham? Because he's talking about Kashmiris, isn't he? He's repeatedly talking about Kashmiris there. Yeah. Just listen to it again. So
It's 2 years since the 2019 lockdown in India-occupied Kashmir. And there are many of my constituents who have family members today living in that region who have been affected by that. What now 4 decades of hostility and restrictions on human everyday life has meant is that they've not been able to live a decent, fulfilled life in the way that all of us would want for our families. And so I just want to offer my solidarity to all those who are concerned about India-occupied Kashmir, concerned about constant restrictions on everyday lives that are taking place, and really concerned about what the future might mean. I know if it was my family, I would share the same concern, the same fears for the future, but also that desperate desire to want hope for the future too. I'll be calling for the UK government to do far more to make sure that Kashmiri people have a voice, and that for my constituents here in Oldham who have family members there, that through your MP you have a voice straight to Parliament.
Absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. In the Kashmiri, in fact, why do I need to do it? Let me bring it up and you can see it yourself. Kashmir is a divided land. Most of the Kashmiri diaspora is based in England and is constituted by people who migrated from a Pakistan part of Kashmir. A large part of the diaspora, particularly those who left Pakistan administered Kashmir in the 1960s, have not migrated due to war or persecution, but were displaced by Mangla Dam in the Mirpur area. Okay? They're blaming the Indians, remember? Most of them are from Mirpur, and they're here because of the dam that the Pakistani government built. After the signing of the Indus Water Treaty with India in 1960, Pakistan built a huge hydropower dam in Mangla on the Jhelum River of the Indus system. The Mangla Dam submerged vast areas and displaced 100,000 people. Almost 5% of this displaced population, up to 5,000 Mirpuri Kashmiris, migrated to the UK. Pakistani government's compensation helped them escape from the country at a time when the British needed labour force, particularly for its textile industry. Most of these migrated Mirpuris settled in Bradford, England. There are actually, give or take, 500 families from the valley living in the UK. So this Indian occupied Kashmir, give or take, there are 500. That's it. That's it. The diaspora does not leave any opportunity to draw attention to the alleged human rights violations by the Indian security forces of the Indian-administered Kashmir because they want that handed over to Pakistan. This is a Pakistani-Indian conflict. It's got bugger all to do with us. It's actually got bugger all to do with the Kashmiris, who are just caught in the middle and exploited by it all. No. And he is doing what he's doing. So why is he doing that? Why has he gone on to do this speech? Here is the wider Labour Party agenda going on. Vote Labour. Kim Ledbetter, remember, Ledbetter. Don't risk a Tory MP who is not on your side. They are already playing divisive politics in this country, saying the Conservatives are pro-Indian and only Labour are pro-Pakistani, and they will save the Muslims and the Pakistanis. They're on your side. That's not my poster. I've not doctored that. That's a genuine Labour Party poster. Do you see? Do you see what they're doing? Do you see what they're doing? And of course, the obvious question to all of you in Oldham is, why is he doing this? We knew Debbie Kashmir was doing this. Why is Jim doing this? Remember the Electoral Commission? And this was the Oldham Chronicle that abused me as well whilst they were at it. It's fine. Jim McMahon takes aim at a divisive online petition. The online petition I set up that Jim McMahon didn't say a single word about until a petition went up was to take Royton North and Royton South out into Oldham East and Saddleworth, and a new urban Oldham constituency could be created that moves all the Pakistanis into a central area with all the Bangladeshis and basically makes a Muslim ward. He claims that's a divisive online petition. I don't want to see it happen. But here we go, edging his bets. Edging his bets. Look at him. There's nothing divisive about trying to prevent a new Oldham constituency that is Muslim dominated. Playing to sectarian politics of faraway places that has got bugger all to do with our town and its people. That's not divisive. You're the divisive one, McMahon. You're the one that has failed the working class, exploited the white working class, ignored the injustices done to them, whilst you homed in and hold him on what I made reference to as McMahon's Muslim army. And he took offence to that. Well, if you can take offence to that, we'll get there. This was the MEN headline. Yeah. The guys on Bangla TV. Guess who's a regular attender on Bangla TV? Yeah. I need to bring his second rant up. Just give me one moment. This one's brilliant. This one was clearly written by him rather than the first one. Following my post on the Manchester Evening News article reporting on proposed community street patrols, and as expected, the comment section was populated by material being shared by the campaign run by Raj Amir. What campaign am I running? The CEO of the failed Collective Spirit Free School. What campaign am I running? Opening my mouth and using my democratic right to object to what you're doing is not unlawful. And you and your mates might want it to be unlawful, but it isn't unlawful. The amount of misinformation which follows needs addressing. You all saw what I put up that he wrote himself. I'm not putting words in his mouth. He wrote all of that himself on his own Facebook page. In fact, I didn't go to the MEM page. I've not asked any of you to post on the MEM page. It is no secret that Cllr Shah has known the person referred to in the article since childhood. Well, it was a secret until I released it. Wasn't it? Did any of you know? Sorry, I'm going to pause for 1 second. Did any of you know of Cllr AROOJ Shah's association with mobsters before I released it? Please, I'll give you a moment. Catch up. Tell me, did any of you know? No. 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 Nope. No idea. No. 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 See? So how was it no secret? It is no secret. She was open and honest about it, both in a speech to council and the media which followed. That is being exploited to imply guilt by association. No, it's not. We just don't want her, the leader of the council, associated with not just a mobster and a childhood friend, McMahon. This is a guy who turned up to the civic centre on election night. This is a man who has repeatedly attacked other politicians who have not demonstrated the level of support he wants to see for his childhood friend. And this is a man who announced her anointment as leader of Oldham Council before anyone else did. So no. She has set out her stall both in what she wants to achieve as leader and specifically on the issue of community patrols, which she is on record as saying they will not be supported by the council. That is not what we said. It's not what we asked, was it? We asked whether these community patrols would be supported by her. That was the questions that were asked, not by the council, but by her. She was asked this 3 times in the last council meeting, and she's on record 3 times dodging answering. Do you see? Do you see how he thinks he's clever with his wording? You're not clever, McMahon. You're a bully. I raised my concern with the Deputy Mayor of Greater Manchester, who oversees Greater Manchester Police, at the end of July and received assurance that the group was not operating. So what was the concern you raised? Do you see how he avoids? This is his own post. What was the concern you raised? And if you received an assurance that the group was not operating, where are you saying, I don't want this group to operate at all? Where is this? So what concerns did you raise? False associations have been made towards me, even though I do not know the constituent proposing the street patrols personally at all. He can't even use his name. Do you see? He can't even use his name. I have had no personal contact with him and have never met socially at any time. To demonstrate just how ridiculous the suggestion is, to my knowledge, I've only met him once briefly on the street. There you go. So you have met him once briefly on the street. So you have met him. A few years ago, whilst out canvassing, as I do with thousands of constituents. I'll bring the photograph up. Despite this, Raja Mir has repeatedly and falsely claimed a close friendship. Where have I repeatedly claimed a close friendship? Show me the post where I have repeatedly claimed a close friendship, McMahon. This is untrue and defamatory. Well, then sue me. Because I'd like you to show me where I have repeatedly claimed you have a close friendship. That's not what I've said at all. You have an association with him, and you do. You do have an association with him. Despite being clear that I do not support street patrols, where has he been clear? Where has he been clear that he does not support street patrols? Raja Mir has implied that I'm involved in it, claiming it is McMahon's Muslim army. I am claiming McMahon's Muslim army is all of the places where you go and nibble your samosas. I'm going to bring up some photographs so there's no ambiguity what I'm making reference to. It's the block postal vote. This framing follows a now familiar pattern of seeking to create division towards the Muslim community. I'm seeking to create division. No, I'm seeking to stop you from exploiting my community. That's what I'm seeking to do. To stop a privileged white man like you turning white working class people against my community and my community against them. That's what I'm trying to do. Not long ago, claiming the black flag would be flying over Oldham. Absolutely. If Glodick and Alexandra, St Mary's and Alexandra, moves into an Oldham constituency, Oldham effectively becomes a Muslim-controlled constituency. The data shows that. It's not my opinion. The data of voting shows that. And as for the black flag flying over Oldham, it was quantified along with the phrase, the building of a nation within a nation. Extensively quantified. The term building a nation within a nation comes from the former head of the Equality and Human Rights Commission, Mr. Trevor Phillips. Mr. Trevor Phillips was last month let back into the Labour Party, even though he had made those comments. So, here is a senior member of the Labour Party who has been allowed back into the party after making those comments. So the Labour Party hasn't got a problem with those comments. Else why let him back in? It is a fact that MPs support all constituents with casework without judgment, fear or favour, and their support we offer helps thousands of people each year. For obvious professional and data protection reasons, I do not disclose personal casework undertaken. Constituents rightly expect complete confidentiality, and they get it. Here we go. The suggestion that I would attempt to secure the early release of a prisoner is untrue and defamatory. I have never said that. I have never said that. And I'll bring up what I have said because your mate will be published it. I've never said you've tried to get... And do you see how he's avoiding it? How he's avoiding whether or not he wrote something to support Irish IMY. Have you seen this? As a matter of principle, everyone has a right to be treated fairly and receive representation from the MP. No, they do not. They do not. The getaway driver of an Oldham cop killer does not have a right to be represented by the MP supporting him. He does not. It has also been said that I have given a reference. See how he has the word reference in inverted commas? There's a reason why. For the person mentioned. Still doesn't mention his name. This is untrue and defamatory. My policy on giving references is stated clearly on my website and is strictly adhered to. Please note that my office does not, under any circumstances, offer personal or character references. Again, the avoidance. Did you write anything in support of him? That's what most people will interpret as a reference, regardless of your double speak and and technical whataboutery that you're going involved in. All MPs can be asked to make representation on behalf of prisoners and ex-prisoners. Why is he going into so much detail? Why is he going into so much detail? This in no way implies an MP has a criminal association with the constituent being represented. No. No one said you have a criminal association. I have said you are associated with criminals. One is not the same as the other. I have not named the constituent, even though others have no issue with personal attacks and hounding individual residents. This guy is a mobster who was convicted in December. He has no problem in naming me. Do you see that? And hounding me. And this is his threat. I have not named those engaging with Raj Amir who repeat false and defamatory allegations. Well, then clear it up. On the attack being launched against Cllr Shah, Raj Amir's stated aim is to unseat her at the next election. I want every one of you gone. I want every one of this Labour administration gone. What makes you think I've got Cllr Shah as an exclusive target? There's thousands of us in this town who want rid of you lot. Oh, and by the way, at what part is wanting rid of a leader of a council with declared friendships with mobsters unlawful or illegal? At what point in raising awareness so people know who these people are, so they can vote accordingly? Since when was that unlawful and illegal? It is a matter of fact that following a sustained character attack against Fielding, he used paid for Facebook advertising during the election campaign. Absolutely. I wanted as many people in my town as possible to be made aware of factual information about Sean Fielding, because if it wasn't factual, or it was an opinion I wasn't entitled to, I would have been arrested. What are these people saying? Just because they control the newspapers, the council-funded newspapers, we can't have our own opinions and we can't share information ourselves. Is that what they're saying? And yes, Liam, exactly. How disingenuous to the people of Failsworth. The people of Failsworth voted him out. I didn't vote him out. I ain't got a sack full of postal votes. I say this. Judge her on what she says and does. We are judging her on what she says and does. She refused to condemn vigilante street patrols proposed by her childhood friend. She did that at a council meeting. 3 times she was asked. That we have a leader with a sense of public duty and determination, if you say so. In a democracy, we can disagree. That she is not a credit to the town. Not least that she is Oldham born and raised. So what? Straight talking and doesn't suffer fools. Straight talking and doesn't suffer fools. I've seen her performances, Jim, at multiple council meetings now. She's not straight talking. She's reading up a script every time. She head down, 100 miles an hour, reading as fast as possible something that someone else has written for her. It's clear to anyone. It wasn't that long ago Mia was claiming she has only made progress by sleeping her way to the top. We've gone through this. I never said anything of the sort. She had insinuated she has a sexually transmitted disease. No, me saying I wouldn't touch her with yours is not insinuating that she has a sexually transmitting disease. Unfortunately, I presume this is you lot, a number of people are now too far down the line actively sharing and originating false and defamatory posts. What are the false and defamatory posts? What were they? Vacacious nature, does that mean empty of me as content? Why don't you tell us about your role in using the funeral of Lee Rigby to help cover up news of grooming gangs? Why don't you just come out and tell us, McMahon? Why don't you just come out and tell us what you did for Irish IMY? Are you speaking on behalf of the public that you don't want to see a back and forth exchange? Well, all you wanted to see was the MP for the town condemn plans by a mobster to launch vigilante street patrols. It would have took 10 words, a paragraph, a couple of sentences. Instead, he's twisted it, and it's about me. It's a revenge campaign waged by Raja Miah. Increasingly clear that generating income through his campaign has been central. How is that increasingly clear? How is that increasingly clear? There you go. But I can think of much more worthwhile causes than the 40 million in interest payments that you and your mates have left us every year, McMahon. Here is a Labour Party MP on 100 odd grand a year telling you whether or not you can spend £2 to buy me a coffee. Oldham is better than this. Oldham is better than you and your kind. Oldham is better than having a mobster being supported. Do you think McMahon has a relationship with the mobster Irish IMY? Did he provide a reference? And when I say reference, I mean a document on council letterhead, on government, on MP letterheaded paper in support of this guy. Anywhere he wants. Him or any of his mates. You know what they're scared of? They're scared of someone my colour, with my expertise, not standing up. Not remaining silent whilst they divide people who look like me with people who look like you. They want people like me to think that our saviours are him and his mates. And if it wasn't for him and his mates, you white folk would run us out of town. They are the racists, proven racists. Silent, yeah, indeed. Indeed. That was the Oldham Times. Late to the show. Very, very late. Followed, even the newspapers in Liverpool were reporting before the Oldham Times reported. And this is a deceptive headline that should really be reported. MP airs concerns over reports of Oldham Vigilante Street Patrol being set up. They've got a picture of him stood in Parliament, making it look as though he aired his concerns there. What they're making reference to is the Facebook statement I've just shared with you. I don't see he's airing his concerns there, do you? Has he said he's against it? Where has he said he's against it? Where has he said, I oppose the mobster Irish IMY setting up a vigilante group in my town, and I will do everything in my power to make sure this does not happen? Where? No. But the Oldham Times, this is a newspaper that claimed I was arrested as part of a child sex exploitation investigation by Greater Manchester Police. McMahon's Muslim Army. Here we go. Here we go. Sue me. Here we go. This was after an election where he turned up to celebration events thanking people for the votes. Here you go. Convicted sex offender in that picture. Here you go. Just before the last election. Here you go. Here you go. He sold the council somehow, not long after this picture, sold all the Chaddison Carnegie Library and baths and stuff to these guys, to that guy behind him, even though his business partner was convicted. Here you go. What a fantastic day. Chaddison and Wearmouth, Labour doorstep. Where are the white folks on your Labour doorstep? This isn't me. It's his picture. And his myth that people give me £2 when they want to, Paul. And you can see how great I am at it because you told me I've not put the link up properly. You go and buy a newspaper. That's your choice. These subscription pages, that Joshy guy, he runs the mill. You pay £70-odd a year for it, I think. That's your choice. It's your choice if you want to support me financially or if you just want to share my work. Irrespective, what I am saying, my views and opinions, they're allowed. In a democracy, they're allowed. I oppose the Islamification of not just my town, but towns like mine across the entire country. And I oppose how, as part of that process, criminals have infiltrated local government, cartels have infiltrated local government, and in return, local government are turning a blind eye to serious crime, which includes the grooming and gang rape of white working class kids. I'm not dividing the town. I'm desperately trying to save my town. Rohingya. A few more Muslims at Oldham Central Mosque. The Arooj Shah speech that Angela Rayner refers to as the best she's ever heard, or one of the best. The fact that she lied, claiming I'd said something that I'd said completely the opposite. Oldham I put a video out with exactly what I'd written on Facebook, and what she claimed I'd written on Facebook was it's the other side of a coin. It's completely the opposite. Why isn't Jim McMahon answering these questions? Because we are too aware that if you were to counter every accusation he makes, that something more ridiculous and outrageous will follow. Well, I'm not the one who set up a vigilante street patrol, am I? This is the photograph I released. One of them. This is another photograph I released. Here is Jim McMahon out campaigning. Here is Irish IMY with Arooj Shah on that very same Facebook collection of posts. The story goes, he was just walking past. Yep. Same sequence of photographs. Here is Irish IMY the night before, the 9th of May. Arooj Shah's announcement as leader of Oldham Council. He's announcing her new role. Not someone from the Labour Party, not someone from the council, not a newspaper. A mobster is announcing who the next leader of Oldham Council is. That's what we object to. It shows a level of interconnection between these people that makes us uncomfortable. I've always suspected they're in the house cooking the samosas and then washing up afterwards, Jack. But you raise a serious point, because by taking pictures all this time almost exclusively with men in the way he does, it actually does women's equality and women's right in our communities, in my community, a disservice. I want to see my politicians advocating equality in a community where women are consistently not equal, not reinforcing the stereotypes and prejudices. Anthony, I raised it. And I also raised that not only was it invite only, the invitations had to be signed off. Can you imagine if Tommy Robinson had been at one of these vote counts? The anxiety I have is here is Greater Manchester Police out with the mobster and his mates, working with him. This is now, of course, in special measures. The MEN claimed it was an emotional reaction, what we opposed. It wasn't emotional. Some think it's a complete slap in the face, but others think it's giving something back. No, it wasn't. I've read most of the posts. The majority thought it was a complete slap, and a few thought otherwise. And it's not emotional reaction. I get everything out there I can, Anthony. I'm afraid I'm doing the best I can. He's not getting into naming individuals because the principles he has set out are his views regardless of where it is and who is involved. Let's just take stock of what he's saying. What he's saying is it doesn't matter who is involved. It's the principles or where it is. Well, then in that case, if it doesn't matter where it is, why have you not spoken about Failsworth, the Failsworth group? See the contradiction? And if what McMahon's stupid principles that he set out, it would mean that I could put a call out for a lollipop patrol made of child sex offenders who are now past a 10-year bar or whatever it might be, and say, let's go to streets where there's problems, there's been accidents or problems with crossing, and set this up with former child sex offender lollipop ladies or lollipop men or whatever the politically correct term is. Of course it matters who they are. Of course it matters. Remember McMahon claimed libel? This is Neil Wilby's article. You can see the top. It's the If Only Madam Mayor. It's one of his first ones where he was attacking us. Here he is gloating, and I'll read this to you because it's relevant. This is what has been established as fact. He's used the advice surgery image. Yeah. You've seen that? So he's used the same advice surgery image that McMahon used in his post. Yeah. This is what has been established as fact, as opposed to what is asserted by Raja. Over a letter sent from the MP's office regarding prison licence conditions. Irish IMY is registered as a constituent of Jim McMahon MP. It is routine for elected representatives to assist such persons, irrespective of their antecedents. No, it's not. Arooj played no part in the letter that was written to the probation service. So there you go. A letter was written to the probation service from Jim McMahon. That's what that's saying. She has no locus as far as casework is concerned. The subject letter did not concern an early release, as claimed by Raja. The prison sentence was indeterminate. The subject matter was an appeal against the proposed unscheduled transfer from a bail hostel in Oldham to more remote premises away from his partner and young family. Okay. So you did write a letter then, did you, McMahon? Did you, McMahon? Did you write a letter? So was it not a reference? If it wasn't a reference, what was it? It has to be said that being adjacent to the criminal justice system and a network of reliable contacts within it makes access to this information far easier for me to secure than it might be for Raja. But it is a curiosity that he should ground a story entirely on speculation and seemingly absent of any interrogative features. The story is Jim McMahon wrote a letter of support for a mobster who was the getaway driver of an Oldham cop killer. Is that not what the story is? Now you can argue, oh, she wrote it, he wrote it, she knew about it, she had nothing to do with it, he had nothing to do with it. It's not a reference, it's something else. But here is the context from Wilby. Now, if McMahon wanted to sue anyone, he should be suing Wilby. Instead, he's openly engaging with Neil Wilby on Twitter. Remember Neil Wilby? He's a malicious blogger, a proven liar, who claimed I was a police informant and police narc and shared photographs of my front door. We all know why that was. Claiming I'm involved in some fraud. It's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. And Peacemaker files. I left Peacemaker something like 15 years ago. But we'll get to that. But do you see, if Wilby had made this up, why is McMahon, as recently as yesterday or the day before, engaging with him? And if this is not a reference letter, what is it? And this is the bit I'm trying to figure out. So I'll share with you what is going through my head whilst I'm figuring it out, and you can join the dots up as well. The Manchester Evening News reported that the mobster Irish IMY had been recalled to prison. And when he was recalled to prison, it was because he broke his parole conditions. And he was picked up in Oldham with 2 mobile phones and a knife. That's what the Manchester Evening, or allegedly a knife. That's what the Manchester Evening News reported. Am I to believe that as a consequence of a letter written by Jim McMahon MP to help keep this mobster in this town, that he then went and got 2 mobile phones and a knife and broke his bail conditions because he was involved in dodginess? And Jim McMahon, if that's the case, if that's the case, the MP, KEIR STARMER's Shadow Transport Minister, is complicit. He is involved in what then took place. On what basis did he take on casework for this guy to the point of writing a letter to a parole board or whatever it was. Yeah, a letter to the probation service. On what basis? On what basis? And he's calling us libel. He's a shadow transport minister. He's one of the most powerful men in the country. What's going on? I know what's going on. You know what's going on. Exactly, Paul. Do you see how evasive they've all been through all of this? It's KEIR STARMER. How can you support this man? He's neck deep in a scandal involving not just his former parliamentary assistant, now leader of Oldham Council. He's neck deep in a scandal involving a mobster. What did you provide for him, Jim? No one's going to accept your I'm hiding behind confidentiality and casework, blah, blah, blah nonsense. Having seen the horrendous nature of his attack. What horrendous nature of my attack? I've been on now for what, an hour and a half or so? Have I sworn at anyone? Have I called for anyone's killing or attacks on anyone? Have I abused anyone or been abusive at all in my language? All of you who listen to me regularly or read my work can see that yourself. What he's seeking to divert from must be even worse. Why? See, is that not libel? Is he suggesting I'm a criminal? It seems to me this is harassment from an MP. In partnership with a malicious blogger and proven liar who has been reported to the police for claiming I'm a police informant. What on earth is an MP, let alone a senior shadow minister, doing engaged with such a man? And this is the man himself.
Job's done. Fucking non's caught. Like I said, we've got a list of people in Oldham as well. So, just get ready.
On what basis is this man there attending an arrest of what looks like some form of child sex offender or, who invited him? Was it the police? Was it one of the police officers? Have the police been infiltrated by mobsters? Yeah, he's now chasing pedos, Denise. Would you believe it? Yeah, and it was threatening, wasn't it? That is what threatening looks like. What's he doing with the list, Martha? Why is that list not with the police? Why is he issuing threats? It's all already out on his vigilante patrols, isn't it? And the consequence was that the Failsworth Independent Party first wrote letter. the Home Secretary. Your Oldham and Saddleworth Conservatives wrote a letter. Here, look, second paragraph. As Conservative Group Leader on Oldham Council, I asked Arooj Shah, Leader of Oldham Council, to discourage these street patrols in the strongest terms. She didn't know, did she? I know you're being polite, Graham Sheldon, but you did ask her to discourage these street patrols in the strongest terms, and she didn't. So the Conservatives have written a letter to her. Even my friend Paul and his team at Proud of Oldham have written a letter. I am sure you will share our alarm by the fact this group is being led by a getaway driver of a convicted police killer, Mr. Dale Cregan, and the potential of this escalating to protection money, extortion and racketeering. We need our council to call an emergency council meeting and implore the Home Secretary to take direct action to ensure this worrying development is addressed with a sense of urgency this merits. It is, isn't it, Charles? I'd imagine, Paul, it's not just racketeering in terms of that. I have no doubt that whilst certain crimes will be jumped on, others will be facilitated. That's what I think will happen. It's clear they want to try and silence me before the May elections come along, on the hope that if they can silence me, they can keep hold of power in this town. There's a grooming gang report scheduled for the back end of November that they're currently desperately involved in trying to do things to. I hope you found value in this evening's transmission. It was for members only, and it was for supporters who bought me a coffee. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. I'll try and be back next Sunday if I can. I know there's a free to air on the first Sunday of the month, but I know you take value in this, and I actually take value in sharing the stuff I put together. And I'll keep going for as long as I can. I think that's the obvious thing, isn't it, Jane? I've spent my life serving my country, and I'll continue to do so for as long as I am able. Thank you very, very much. Good night.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.